Thank you all for coming. I'm Lisa Federer. I'm one of the librarians here, research informationist, and I do the Data Wednesday series. But today we get to hear from somebody new and different. This is Kristian Allen from the Digital Library Program, and I'll let him get started and talk to you about data visualization.
Yeah, so cool. Thank you, Lisa, for the invite. My name is Kristian Allen. I'm a programmer with the Digital Library over in Powell, and I haven't been to the biomed classroom before, so I'm jealous of the setup you guys have here. This is really top notch. It's really cool. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about data visualization for the web. And so the goal will be, we have data visualization is a huge topic. So I think the goal will be to just for the next 10, 15 minutes, give a roundup of what a data visualization is, who's using it, what it can be used for, some examples of it, just to get people really excited about really all the cool stuff you can do with data. And then we'll use a tool. We'll talk about a couple tools that are available, and we'll get started. We'll use some World Health Organization data, and we'll just suck that into a tool called Google Fusion Tables, which is really nice. It's a great tool for if you have medium-sized data sets. I know in the biosciences you guys have gargantuan data sets, but if you have something in the hundreds of thousands or in the tens of thousands, a good way just to test it is to suck it into Google Fusion charts, and you have out of the box maybe 10, 15 different charts, line charts, area charts, some network graphs. We'll do some geospatial mapping right out of the box, so we have geoencoding. You don't have to do anything, and we also get the option of KML files if you're interested in that. So I think what we'll do is Lisa sent along a great data set that has both time series and some geospatial data. So what we'll do is for the immunization rates for infants in various countries. So we'll plot that on a map, and we'll look that over the space of time. So that'll be a good example to do. And we'll do that all in the space of 20 to 25 minutes. And it'll just give you a flavor for the types of things you can do really quickly. You can publish this, you can share data with your colleagues, or you can just post something to the web really quickly. So let's get started. I'm going to dim the lights so everybody can see a little better. Oh, before I start, I wrote this a little small, but so it's just, this is the slides. If you want to look at this on your local laptop, it's just bit.ly UCLA_library _data viz, V-I-Z _slides. And in the slides, there's a link to the kind of the lesson that we're going to go through and to the data sets and everything like that. So they should all be self-contained in there. But if anybody can't find anything, just raise your hand and just let me know, and we'll get you there. And so I'll dim the lights now so we can see a little bit better. So I just talked about this a little bit. We're going to look at some existing visualizations that I think are pretty cool. Actually, with some individuals that are connected to UCLA. One of the really cool things about working at a research library is not only, and in addition to working at a great university, we're also top-notch research libraries. So we have access to not only data, but we have some really talented people in design and media arts and the statistics department who are very well known in the visualization community. And you may have seen some of the visualizations that Nathan Yao has already worked on. They've been featured in the New York Times, and one of his blogs that I follow is called Flowing Data, and we'll just look at an example of that. And it's really held in wide regard in the visualization community. So we have a really rich community on campus, and so it's something very valuable that is an option to take advantage of. And so this is we're going to review some tools and some data structures for the web. So some things to think about if you haven't started collecting data, just the types of data that's consumed traditionally on the web. So an example is XML isn't used maybe as heavily as some other formats. There's another format called JSON or JSON, depending on how you pronounce it. That's sort of gained in popularity, and it's just, you can think of it as just sort of a stripped out XML. It's very bare bones, and that's what a lot of the visualization tools have shifted towards. And we'll just look at some tools to converting your data. It's not a big deal. If you have data in a spreadsheet, you can move it to that very, very easily. And I mean, this is fairly obvious. I think you guys know this. So data visit, why would we even want to use it? It draws users into the content. What I think is really neat is it allows the data to become interactive, so users become participants in it, and they may find things in a data set or research tool that that was never anticipated, and knowledge increases through that discovery. So I think a good example is this is, so we took some data from the Click Labs, and so the Click Labs keeps track of every time a laptop is checked in and out. And Jonathan Wilson took that data, populated the same tools that we're using here, a fusion table with it, was able to sort through it, look at it visually, and it drew out some interesting points that he didn't anticipate before. So he basically sucked everything into a table, was able to sort it by he was able to look at what laptops were rented out the most, and it wasn't an equal distribution. So you would think, okay, it's just going to be a bell curve. All the laptops are going to get rented out the same. But what they found was there was a disproportionate number of laptops that are getting rented out 10 to 20 times higher than any of the others. And this caused concern because these are going to be in for repair more often. They'll be worn down. They'll be worse condition overall. So it was just an interesting point that they had never thought of previously. And it turns out what it was they have cubby holes with each of the laptops, and they have the laptops labeled where you store them. And when someone asks for a laptop, you're going to go for the quickest route. So everyone was grabbing the laptops closest to the door, and those were rented most commonly. So we haven't thought a way to resolve that, but you could randomize the placement of the laptops and things like that. You could get fancy. But it was just those types of things, the stuff that you wouldn't maybe necessarily looking for, but you would find just by having a visual representation of the data. Another thing is it's a good way to just consume mass amounts of data quickly. So for our example, what we're going to do is we'll look at hundreds of countries plotted on a map. We'll see their vaccination rates for infants over a span of time, and then we'll map those by quartile. So immediately you could see, okay, who's below 25%, who's below a certain threshold, where you could get that from a table, but it would be a little tough to sort through it, and it's a little cumbersome. And whereas if you look at a color-coded map, you'd be able to find it instantly. And see, these are some fun examples. I'll poke through some of these quickly that I think are pretty cool. Some of them are dated, but I think they're really interesting. And they all use common data sets. So the baby name wizard, you can just see sort of, it's like a stock graph of your name over time, which is very interesting. And the developer who originally wrote this was part of the IBM Many Eyes project, so that is another very well used data visualization tool. And so this is just all the names. So it's very interesting. You can see, if you type in relative, you can just see the popularity of your name over time. So things like, so I'll type in I always tease my brother because his stock is plummeting here. So, but and it also has the most popular names and things like that. I think wasn't Apple popular for a little while, or there was if you can punch in any different names. But so it's just interesting to see. I mean, from a visualization queue, like what was popular in the late 1800s and what's popular now. And there's a series of standards and things like that that seem to hold the test of time. But so that's an interesting tool to play with. So you can see how this is a massive data set from the Social Security Administration, and we can navigate it in a series of seconds. So it's just a matter of structuring your data. And this is an advanced tool, and there is some custom programming involved in this. You can't just plug it in the data set directly. But it just gives you a feel for the types of tools. And this is an interesting tool you may have seen already. It's just this is from UCLA's Nathan Yao with the Flowing Data blog, and he wrote this a while back. And this was built on open source tools, so this is actually this framework is available, and it just plots a series of Walmart over time. So it's interesting because maybe something you wouldn't anticipate from a spreadsheet. You could see which pockets Walmart tended to develop in for whatever reason. It started in Middle America, and then it spreads, I think, to the East Coast, and then finally to the West Coast. And then it's interesting. It depends on population density and things like that. So some of the more spacious states like Montana, Idaho, and Utah don't get as many, whereas like the Northeast corridor is completely packed eventually. And so. So this is just another example of cool stuff that I think you could present data and just consume it really, really quickly. Then I had just a couple more we'll run through real quick. What I think is pretty interesting is one of the probably one of the most boring sets of data is weblogs, so we keep these at the library. And if you have a blog or you have a website that you maintain, you may use Google Analytics, which provides some data visualization to see where people are coming from and things of that. So this tool is actually it turns for every visit to a web page, there's a record of where the source is from, what they're requesting for, the amount of time it took to serve that request. And it's just in a gigantic text file, and it's very hard to actually make sense of anything with it. And so this is a really neat custom tool that it visualizes it. It makes it, at the very least, sort of an art, fun, almost like a Pong-like video game. And so an example of where we were interested in actually using something like this. So for example, we just got a lot of documents from the Tahrir Square revolution in Egypt and the Green Movement in Iran. And we had access to some of the weblogs that the maintainers of websites were containing. And they were attacked by other either government organizations or other individuals in cyberspace. And so something we're looking at is actually providing a tool like this to visually represent something like that. And I think it's very, so you could actually represent a cyber attack or a denial of service attack visually. And it's eye candy in a way, but it helps you digest information really quickly. And then finally, before we get started, I was going to review just talk about some of the common tools. So we already talked about Google Charts and Google Fusion Tables, and that's what we're going to use today. And you don't have to be a programmer to use that. You can do a lot with it without being a programmer, but having some just knowledge of how to structure a conditional or a loop or something like that. If you want to take it farther and you're interested in learning JavaScript or some custom programming, there are JavaScript libraries that you can build more advanced charts with. And so I previously had given, so if people are interested in this, definitely let me know after class, or this is a topic that you'd be interested in learning more about. I gave another presentation on D3 where we took some data and built some of these charts, and it was just an example of how you can take a data set, and if you find something that looks really nice, you don't necessarily have to build it yourself, but if you find something that looks cool, you can usually massage your data and adapt it to use that. And so we used an example of, so we used hierarchy data. So we used this tool, and we took a bunch of data from the contents of cereal, like so the breakfast cereal, and so you have, and then we divided that into a hierarchy, and then we mapped it out so to get their ingredients. So we had cereal, General Mills, Fruit Loops, then the sugar, fiber content, and everything like that. And this is completely interactive, and we were able to do this without actually writing a lot of custom code, since it fit into this data structure. So if there's, a good example of stuff that people have already created, that there's no need to reinvent the wheel, is something like heat maps, which are pretty common, hierarchical data, any geospatial data, somebody probably has already created something, network graphs, so just something like mapping, you could export your Facebook or LinkedIn data and see who knows who and things like that. And Google Fusion Charts does have a crude version of a network graph, so we'll do something with that as well. So D3 is one of the prominent visualization libraries, so just something to keep in mind if you're interested. Another popular one that's used heavily, and one of the original contributors, I think, and co-writers is on campus, is Processing.js, which is, I have a link to it, and if you do a Google for Processing.js, that's another data visualization library, and they strive to make it very easy to program in it, so it's very friendly to even non-programmers or non-developers. All right, so, and there's a couple other one. We have tons of census data, and so that's available as well with the American Community Survey. Is actually very detailed census data, so that's something that provides a lot of interesting visualizations. Okay, this is great. So how do I get started? So we had talked just a little bit about this. Different tools expect different formats. And we had talked about XML versus JSON versus a spreadsheet, things of that. So one of the things that, if you're just starting out or you are collecting data, I would make an effort to try to make your data as convertible to different types as possible. So either make sure you can always export it, or make an effort to be able to always export it to a CSV or plain text or something like that. And if you can get it down to that level, then you can convert fairly easily to a bunch of other tools. So these are just two examples of, even if you have a spreadsheet, there's a tool that's on the web called Mr. Data Converter, and you can actually just plop in your spreadsheet and convert it to JSON or XML or a bunch of other tools right off the bat. So you don't have to do any of the conversion, but if you have it in a standard format, you can take advantage of that. If you have industrial strength like data sets, Google Refine is a really interesting tool. I've just scratched the surface with it, but it's definitely, other people are interested on campus on it. We're interested in the digital library and using it, and it's a data manipulation and mining tool and it has a lot of really advanced programming interfaces. So some simple examples of something you want to do is maybe you took all your data and you encoded a bunch of stuff. At the very simple cases, you have two-state abbreviation for states of the U.S. and you want to extrapolate that to GA equals Georgia, NY equals New York. That will provide a lot of the tools for you to do that. And you can, so that's just a one-to-one mapping, but even if you have conditional, if the value of this field is this, then it should be that. You can do all that in a very nice interface. So it takes, it takes Excel to another level by providing a lot of pre-canned macros and things like that. And it has a lot of additional features like data deduping and things like that. So it'll let you know, hey, these records kind of look the same. Do you want to collapse them? What do you want to do with them? So it's free, and it's a very interesting tool. And we could have a whole nother workshop on that. So if that's something people are interested in, is cleaning up their data sets, which is kind of a precursor to actually doing something with the data, let me know. And that's something else that we can have a little workshop or lab on. This is something we already talked about, but so basically this is the complexity of the structure of your data. Usually so maybe you start off just with a plain text file or comma delimited file. The next step up would be using it in JSON, XML, or Excel. Then when you have a larger data set, you use a database, a relational database like FileMaker Pro or Access. And then if you have very, very specialized data or mass amounts of data or very particular tools, that's at the very, very far end of the curve. But there's a lot of tools out there for gigantic data sets. R is really good for statistical processing. So it's like an open source version of SAS in a way. And there's processing and JavaScript libraries as well that we just talked about with D3. And Raphael and a few others. The nice thing is people have created, I guess what I'm trying to stress is people have already created these tools, so if you feel frustrated or you want to do something, most likely somebody has created a tool to address that need. So just ask around, ask your colleagues, drop me an email, or if you're having trouble trying to do something, or you see something on the web, like, hey, I like this, I want to do this. What is it using? How can I use that? And then so now we'll get to just some of this. The link that I provided just shows some of the. This doesn't want to play nice and. The Google, so this is what we'll be doing. We'll be doing some of these graphs. So out of the box, this is just sort of an example where you can look at a bunch of stuff really quickly, play with the data. You can edit this right here, add values, and rerun. So I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. So the idea would be just to get a feel for different graphs or how they would look before you actually invest the time to move your data into something like that. So the most expensive thing is if you look at a chart and it's a lot of work to use, and then you move your data to it and it's really not what you want. So this is a way of just sort of previewing charts before you spend a lot of time with them. And some of these are available. You don't have to do anything. There's no custom coding, and so this is just an example of the types of things that are available from Google right out of the gate. And so for our example, this is the plan, and we can tweak it and change it. We're going to take a use case with the World Health Organization data with hepatitis B immunization rates for infants, and we're going to start with the raw spreadsheet. So this will be a use case that maybe you would use. You just have a spreadsheet, you're sitting on your desk, and you'd like to use this. So we're going to find out what we need to do to sort of tweak that to be able to use in Google Fusion tables. So what we'll do is we'll import that into the Google spreadsheets, change some stuff on it, tweak it, and then we'll create a Fusion table out of it. And we'll create a standalone map. We'll export and view that on Google Earth on a laptop, and we'll have an interactive web page. And we'll also show a bunch of the line charts. We'll do some network graphs, and we'll show some examples of so the next step the next level we can take with that. And so I have the link right here. So and I'm going to just be going through this, basically this document. So if you get confused or lost, or this is unclear, just let me know, and I can update this. But it should be all here. So if somebody wanted to go back later and do it, or you're not able to watch it here, you can do it remotely. So the one thing I guess I neglected to mention, but I assume everyone has, you'll need a Google account to take advantage of that. So again, you don't have to have that now if you want to do this later. But to take advantage of a lot of these, you'll need a Google account. I know it stinks having a Facebook, LinkedIn, who knows, a billion, UCLA, a billion different accounts. But yeah, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. You probably already have a Gmail or account, and so if you have that, you can use that as well. And also, we'll be doing this in Google Chrome. I think it works in all the browsers, but just Google tends to develop with Google-centric view. So some of the performance is usually best in Google Chrome, but they usually work in Firefox and Safari pretty well, and IE most of the time. So I'll be going through this with you guys right now. So the first thing we'll do is I have a link to the actual data set that I just have stored locally on my Google Drive. But so if we just cut and paste that URL, and then you'll just be given a preview of it. And so this is actually, and so we'll download this. If you go into File, Download, that'll just be brought down into your downloads directory. And I'll just open this up briefly to get a glance at what we're going to be working with. So this is a multi-page spreadsheet. And on the first page, you notice there's just sort of an explanation of what we're looking at. And then there's a series of different pages in here. The page that we're going to be working with, the sheet that we'll be working with, is the second one, data. So this is the data that we'll be sucking in and taking a look at. Something of note, so the way Google Fusion Charts works, the tool that we're going to be using, is it only works with one data sheet at a time. So you couldn't just pull in this whole thing and work with multiple data sheets, so that is a limitation of it. So that's fine. What we're going to do is we'll pull this into Google Spreadsheet, which is basically the online version of Excel. Tweak it a bit, we'll move one of the data sheets over, and then we'll create a Fusion table with it. And then at that point, it's sort of in a base state that we can do some work with it. So let me just close these. So if you go to Google Drive, all right, I'm already there. And then choose Create and pick Spreadsheet. And you just get a blank spreadsheet. And what we're going to do is import this data. So under File, Import, you should see Choose File, and we'll pick what we just downloaded. And then just click Import. And so this may depending on the size. This is not a huge data set, but it's fairly large. A couple, I think, a couple dozen thousand. So after you're finished, you'll see an Open Now link, and just click that. And so now this is you've now imported a Google, you've imported the data from Excel into Google Spreadsheet. This is online, this is available, so if you wanted to share this with colleagues or they wanted to edit it, you can do that here, which is nice. And a lot of people can be editing or taking notes at the same time, so even just besides data visualization, this is a plug for if you're working with colleagues. It's pretty neat. You can each put notes in here and be working on something on a data set at the same time. So we're not going to make too many fancy changes. All we're going to do is just we're going to move, if you click on data and move that in front of notice, so that will be the first, that will just be the first data sheet. You don't even have to click save or anything, and it'll automatically save that. And then if you want, you can just close this. And if you still have this open, you can close this and go back to, so you should see in the spreadsheet that you just created, it should be in the list of your documents. And now we'll import that into a Fusion table, and then we're ready. So if you click Create, you should see Fusion table under the list here. And then we'll choose Google Spreadsheets. And you should have a list here, and you should see what you just created. And so just click that and click Select. And so the next step then, it'll import partial. I'll do a partial import of it, and of course, fails for me here. Let me try that again. All right, let's see. So what should come up is a little preview of, it'll allow you to select what, okay, let me just close out of this. And then if this doesn't work, it'll just take me a minute. I'll just pull it in directly from the spreadsheet. But is anybody else having any issues with it? Okay, So I'm not sure why that would occur, but I'll take a look. All right. Let's see here. So this imported. So this was the issue that, so if this is, I imported the spreadsheet, so this is just giving an example of the issue we had that I was attempting to avoid. But so I imported the spreadsheet directly, and we can see this is just sort of the first sheet on that spreadsheet, and that's not what we're interested in. We're actually interested in the second sheet. So let me give this one more shot to see if this works. Of course. So let's see. All right. So I'm sorry about that. I burned about 10 minutes with that. But so eventually, usually this should go fairly smoothly. So this is a preview of the sheet that we're going to work with, and you can actually select the different sheets here. But I just want to show an example of how, if you wanted to import the spreadsheet directly, make sure your data is on the first sheet. That's all from that. So this looks like the data that we want to work with. We click next. This is just verifying the columns are in the first row, but you can, again, depending if your data is a little slightly different, you can change that. You can name it a couple different things. You can have some different metadata associated with it, and then you should be able to just click finish, and this will give us essentially sort of like a spreadsheet on steroids. We have a lot more options with it. We can sort through the data a lot quicker. And so this is what you'll see when you first import your data. So we have about 2,300 rows. We have some of the columns that we're first interested in are the display. This data is in percentages. So we have yearly values for countries, and then we have the percent of the vaccination rate. So the first thing I wanted to do was just, well, I'll show you some of the options really quickly here, so I don't want to get bogged down. It takes a little while to do some of the geocoding stuff. So these are a lot of the charts that we have out of the box that we can do some examples of. So we have line charts, scatter plots, pie charts. We have a fun little network graph. So an example of something that I don't think we'll get to, but I had planned on doing was, right now this spreadsheet only deals with one particular illness, but if we had a bunch of illnesses, let's say you had a bunch of illnesses and you wanted to see which countries were connected to what illnesses, you can show the link between country, and in our case I think it's GHO, and then by default it doesn't have all the countries in here, so there's 180 countries. We'll just bump this up to 50, and so you could see how this could be pretty cool. You could have right now it doesn't really make much sense just because we have one link to it, and you can have if your data is structured correctly, you can have links off of the leaf nodes and things of that. So this is actually a fairly complex graph to build programmatically, but now you have this sort of out of the gate with just your data if it's structured correctly. We have some line charts, bar charts, and quickly I'll do the mapping. So right away, if you click, in order to engage the map, if you click on the map tab, it'll try, Google thinks it's smart, and it'll start trying to, in order for it to plot data on a map, it has to get the longitude and latitude of something. So rather than you going and do that for all your data, Google is smart enough to know, okay, Afghanistan or United States, I know the lat long for that, or it knows the states for that, and it makes its best guess. It's not always right. So for example, we're going to load some data in here, and it will plot Georgia, over by Atlanta, whereas it's actually most likely its own country. So there's some ambiguous changes, but you can change those manually. So in order to update that, if you click on the little arrow right next to it, and then under select location, we want to force it to use country. So this is I think I noted, put a note of this. This is an expensive process, and it takes a little while for Google to crunch these and to figure out the values of it. And it looks like there's I don't know if it's a bug or just a quirk, but if you think, oh yeah, it's doing some stuff, I'll go work on something else. But if you switch browser tabs or applications, I've found that it stops encoding them. So you have to keep the window open till it's finished. And so after it's done with this, the data will look a little wonky, because we know what we did is we just sucked in all the data, and we have multiple data points associated with a geographic position, which is that will look kind of strange on a map. So if you have a value for each year over the course of time, from 2000 to 2010, all for Afghanistan, all the push pins will be on top of each other. So what we'll do is we'll add a filter to just limit it to 1 for now. It's in this simple case, giving time constraints. We'll just do that. You can get a little more fancy where you can add a time slider. So maybe what you want is a slider on the bottom where you move that, and it will actually update the map to only show you the values that are applicable to that time range that you select. And that's also an option. So when this finishes, we'll sort it by a year, and then right out of the gate you have some ways to just divide up your data. So in our case, we'll just quartile it, but you could change it to anything. If a value is X, Y, Z, I want to highlight it, I want to show something. If you know a little HTML and you click on it, you can change the, by default, you're given the actual record of the data in a little info bubble. And if you know HTML, you can change that and tweak that. So if you have a link in your data, or you have somewhere else outside of your data set that you want to link to, you can add that. You can even a link to an image or something like that, you can add in there, and use just CSS to style it. So you can make it look pretty, and you have access to outside resources as well. So when this wraps up, we'll see it may look a little strange, and then we'll narrow down the data set. Then we'll bucket some of the data, and also now that so there's only a handful of countries here, so it may just be choosing some. I'm not sure what, it may choose a year that there's not that many countries available. So we're going to filter by year, and we'll use 2011. And this is, the filters are just a range filter, so if you actually leave it open-ended on either side, it simulates a greater than or a less than. And if you do it both, it's essentially equals. So this is data for only 2011. For each of the countries that we have listed in the data set. So this is just the raw data, and you can customize this. You can strip all this out. You can change it to percentages. You can anything in this bubble you can change. So right away it looks kind of ugly. We'll change some of the styles. These things were hard for me to click on, so I'll make it a little bigger. So this is a little easier for me. And then the next thing is I got a bunch of red push pins. I don't know, that doesn't really tell me much. So let's if you go onto change map styles again, and under buckets, we'll divide it into 4 buckets. And again, this is just a really simplistic example, but you could change this to wherever you want. You can have a conditional based on another column. You have a lot of flexibility here. I'll bump these up to a little bit bigger. I'll make this red. You have the option for, you can customize these icons. So you've, anything with Google Maps you can do in here as well, which is nice. You've seen custom icons and things like that. You can do that as well. So again, this just now by glance we can see some of the lower rates in a country. So I think Chad has a low rate. So only again, this is a percentage, so 22%. But it's a good way of just sort of looking at something really quickly and analyzing it. And so we're able to take that spreadsheet data, which is almost not unreadable, but it's just a huge chunk of data, and just plot it on a map really quickly if it was working in a series of about 10 to 15 minutes. One of the next steps we want to do is add a slider, add a time slider to this, so we could get at all the different slices of our data. So this is just one slice of 2011. Then another nice option you have is if you are using separate like ArcGIS or GIS tools, or using a KML file and other tools, you have access. All this is available in KML. So if you go to download, you can choose the format. So we'll just download that in KML real quick. Where this would be useful is an example we used in the digital library is we have a collection of LA Times photos that we have the latitude, longitude for where they were taken. So we sucked them down that were related to the UCLA campus, and we were able to make a virtual tour in Google Earth. And so you can, by default, this is just for some reason the push pins are very small, and you have to bump them up here. So I'll make this huge. So you can zoom into these, and you can build custom tools or custom. Well, these are huge. So you have a lot. You have all the Google. Essentially, we got Google Earth for free, all in the span of about 20 minutes. So that's also what you get if you're able to import that data. Then I had hoped to show real quickly, briefly discuss this, and you have access to all these chart options that you can filter on. So we have some time series data. So let's take a look at the different countries. So if you choose filter, and then we want to filter on country, it'll give us a list of, these are all the distinct values for the country that we have. And then in the right-hand column is the number of records. And then if you choose a checkbox, you can filter by that. So I had chose the second chart, just a basic line chart, like a stock chart. And we'll choose Albania. And so there's only about 10, well, in this case, there's 18 data points. But if you had a huge swath of data points, this is similar to the Google stock screener, where you can narrow that down, and it'll dynamically adjust. So and these are some of the other tools. I want to leave enough time for questions. So you can click around and try a bunch of these other. You may have to tweak it a little to work with the data, but the point is you can put together a really impressive dashboard for maybe some of your data sets with some experience in the span of like a half hour and 45 minutes, and you can share that with others. Without any coding. And so then the next level would be you could actually, if you want to take it a little bit farther, tweaking something a little more than the colors and things like that. You want to add some more interactivity. You have access to the full Google API. So if you're comfortable with programming in JavaScript, that would be the next level to take. and all these are referenceable by a URL. So if we go back to this, and we wanted to share this content, you can actually get the link to this URL and share it with others. So they could embed it into a URL or your blog or something like that. So I know I wrapped up quickly there near the end, but I just wanted I wanted to finish so we had maybe about 10 minutes to talk about questions or other interests that you guys had. So with that, I'm wrapped up here. Were there any other things that you guys were particularly interested in or you had questions about with this?
Question?
Sure.
So, just to get at this again, I just want to review. You said we're using these Google tools.
Mm-hmm.
You said you have to have a Google account, a Gmail.
Yes, you do have to have a Gmail account to take advantage of it.
And where are you going to find this?
A Google account?
No, this set of tools.
Oh, okay. So
You probably said it.
yeah. So in if there should be a link in the document, but if you go to it used to be called why do I keep it? It used to be called Google Documents. I think it may still be. But if it's Google Drive now, so drive.google.com, and this is this is just more of you can think of Google Drive as just a bucket for your stuff, so you can store anything there. You have a limited amount of space, and I guess it's the sub program on the left side. You have Google Docs where you can this spreadsheet or the PowerPoint presentation I used just used Google presentation. It's as a side note, just the Google Docs tools are really cool. You can create surveys with Google Forms, and so how this would tie in with data visualization, which is kind of neat, is you can hook a lot of these tools together and create something that's dynamic and its own ecosystem. So you could actually create using Google Form. You can create a survey of some data, and it's just drag and drop. Some people enter some stuff in that. That populates a Google spreadsheet. Then you can read that spreadsheet and plot that somewhere. And this is all real time. And so drive.google.com.
By the way, the slides and all the links to the tools I'll put up on the course webpage, which I'll email out all of you.
So did you guys have any data sets that you were working with or any examples or things that, challenges that you'd run across or use cases that, do you mainly have huge data sets that you need to winnow down, to summarize or? Go ahead.
I'm trying to get the 3 dimensions.
Okay.
I have an X, a Y, and then I have an intensity, which is a Z.
Okay. So would you be able to use something like a heat map, I guess, would have it?
That might be one possibility.
Okay.
Proteomics data.
Okay.
It's mass and retention time and intensity.
Okay. And I'm just curious, how big are your data sets?
They're in the megabyte to the gigabyte.
Okay.
It's a protein.
Okay, right. So it's huge. Okay. Yeah. So that's one. Yeah. So that's one limitation. This is definitely not an industrial strength. It's more for if you have a summary of tool or records in like the hundreds of thousands, which is still big.
I have some that are only 4,000.
Yeah. So that's perfect. What it would be useful for is like just prototyping something. Spend 20 minutes or half hour and be like, okay, this is headed in the right direction. Now I've warranted the time to invest some custom programming.
Something that would give you a surface?
Heat
map as opposed to a heat map?
Yeah, there may be. I'd look at this. I would go through here and see. So my first bet would just be see if somebody had already created something similar. And a lot of these are. So I'd have to poke around, but I think there's a couple different options for. for something like that, like a surface heat map. I'm sure I've seen it before, and if I've seen it before, then someone's programmed it. So, oh, this is one that we were using for. There was another. I think this one. This is a circular heat map that we used for another tool, but it's just an example of some of the things you could do with it. So. Okay, well, if that's it, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, and it was fun, and I look forward to some of the other presentations we have.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I'm going to map all my data now.
So, if you guys did not already sign in, please make sure you do that before you leave. And quick advertising for the next session for Data Wednesdays is going to be August 25th. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month. How many of you get NIH grants? For one team? How about your data sharing plan? Do you have that down? Yeah, we're going to talk about that in August. The NIH data sharing policy, who has to submit a proposal or a plan with their proposal, what to include, all of that good stuff. So we'll cover that in August. September, which I think is the 28th, we'll be talking about Evernote and using that for organizing your research and your life in general. So those are available for sign up now. Also starting in August, we're going to offer them via webinar. So if you can't make it here in person, you can watch it live from wherever you have an internet connection. So those signups are on the website now. Like I said, I will send out the links to all of the slides and materials that Kristian talked about, as well as an evaluation for the class. So look for those in your email. Any questions? All right, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next month.